This Hyundai Creta N Line has been part of Autocar India's long-term fleet for just about a year now, and for the bulk of that time, it's been my car. So I'm genuinely sad to tell you that it's going back to Hyundai. So over this farewell video, I'll tell you all that I liked about it, all that I didn't like about it, and also some learnings as a new father. I'll start with what I liked. First things first, the way it looks. There are over 1 million Cretas on Indian roads, a few lakh of which are of this shape that came out in 2024. So I'm happy that ours is an N-line. I love what Hyundai has done with the grille, the bumpers, this red detailing, the wheels. It really adds some distinction and helps our Creta stand out from the sea of other Cretas on the road. It looks cool, but I wish it sounded it too. The dual tip exhaust does so much for the look, but I wish they had worked on the soundtrack that it produced as well. It sounds exactly like the standard Creta. Now, I'm not one to modify my cars. I'd like to keep them stock, but if I had to make a change, the first thing would be this. The interior was home. Now, I've spent a lot of time in the Creta's cabin, and it's a place that I love returning to because it's just so logically laid out. Everything is where you expect it to be. The steering is nicely adjustable just to where you'd like it. The screen is slick and easy to use. There are physical controls for the air conditioning system, so really nicely done. I also like the fact that there are lots of storage spaces scattered around the cabin. The Creta is feature-packed, but there were some standout elements. One of the highlights on the Creta, and something that I appreciate every day, are its cameras. So you get a 360-degree view, and it is really superb. All the cameras work really well, and there is a crispness to the resolution that you don't get in many cars several notches higher up the price ladder. Even the blind view displays that pop on the digital dials are really well done. It's something my eyes instinctively went to even when I switched cars. While talking features, I made a small upgrade that had an oversized impact on my experience. If there was one thing that was missing on the Creta, it was wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay for versions with the 10.25-inch touchscreen. Thankfully, Hyundai gave a fix with this USB dongle. Now, put this in, and what it does is it unlocks wireless connectivity for your phone. It is 4,500 rupees really well spent. At times I have noticed that it doesn't readily connect, but an easy fix for that is to disconnect the Creta from your Bluetooth list and just connect to the USB dongle, and then it works smoothly. But for its cool look and features, my fondness for the Creta was actually down to how good a family car it was. The Creta N Line will always hold a special place in my heart because it was the first car that I used after the birth of my daughter. So in effect, her first automotive memories were in this very car. Now, talking as a father, I have a few observations. Firstly, the Creta N Line gets ISOFIX child seat mounts, and that is something that you should insist on if you have a child. And of course, you must always use a child seat. Now, talking of the ISOFIX child seat mounts, the mounts on the Creta N Line are slightly hidden behind the cushioning of the seat. It's not a biggie for someone who will move the seats only once every couple of months, but for someone like me who has to move the seat from car to test car every couple of days, it is a bit of an irritant to sort of find my way through. Of course, what also helped my daughter's experience at the back on hot and sunny days was sunshades, so she could get some rest while we were on the move. Now on to a feature that is really hated on social media but made a big difference to my child's journeys, and that is the panoramic sunroof. Now, she would get very irritable if we got stuck in a traffic jam or there was no movement, and that really raised our stress levels. A eureka moment happened when I opened the panoramic sunroof and we found her to calm down. She got lost into the sights above the Creta, and that really helped. I actually made use of more features than I normally would have. I'll be honest, I never really used eSIM based connected features beyond a new car evaluation, but things changed after the birth of my daughter. You see, over the summers, the process of putting her into the child seat in a hot car made her very irritable. The easy fix: pre-cool the car using Hyundai's Blue Link app. It's a solution that has worked really well, and I haven't faced any of the network or connectivity issues that are known to be common with connected features. A thumbs up for the Creta's air conditioning that provided strong cooling through the harshest of the summer. Dual zone climate control is a cool feature, but individual control for cooling at the back would have been more beneficial for us because the rear seat was where my VIPs sat. The Creta is among the roomiest mid-sized SUVs, and that space has really counted for a lot in the Bhatia household. The child seat really takes up a lot of space at the back. My wife sits here, and on top of her usually sat my 5-year-old Cocker Spaniel Soda. Now, he is also a fan of the car because it's easy to jump into, and the distance between the rear seat and the front center armrest is just right for him, so he can pop up front and say a nice hello to me at every traffic light. The fact that the Creta's rear windows roll all the way down also got his vote. Of course, it was handy that the N Line uses black upholstery, making it easier to keep clean than the standard Creta's cream interior would have been. On the subject, the black theme and red detailing gels well with the exterior treatment, but now, in terms of interior quality, the Creta's cabin is not quite the benchmark that the first generation Creta was. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a much more solidly put together car, and it still feels quite tight despite all the use, and that's not something that you could say about the first generation Creta that developed this looseness over time. What I'm talking specifically about are the plastics used inside. There are a lot of hard plastics. There's a way we look to the gloss plastics, and when you rest your leg against the center console, you'll hear this creak. This is something that we had brought up on our long-term Creta IVT as well. And one more thing, not a complaint, but an observation. On paper, the Creta's 433-litre boot is quite large by segment standards, and ordinarily you can fit a reasonable amount of luggage back here. That still, you introduce a baby stroller into it. There's really not space for much else in here. Now onto the farewell drive. The Creta N Line comes powered by a 1.5-litre 160 horsepower turbo petrol engine, and while it is offered with a manual gearbox, we opted for the one with the 7-speed dual clutch transmission. Yes, I know for an SUV that is trying to portray a performance side, a manual would have worked well, but I'll be honest, driving a manual on the roads I do, through the traffic I do, would have not worked out. But it's not the smoothest gearbox that you can have the Creta with. It does fumble a bit at low speeds, and you'll also feel a bit of jerkiness when you're climbing on an incline. For a smoother in-city driving experience, opt for the IVT. The N Line wouldn't be the Creta I'd recommend to a prospective buyer for another reason. Now, it's not been entirely smooth sailing with the Creta N Line, especially on Mumbai's less than perfect roads. There is a firmness to the suspension that comes through, and you have to remember that the N Line rides on 18-inch rims, whereas the standard Creta rides on 17-inch rims, and that makes a big difference. You feel a lot of the surface below you, and at times it even feels jarring. So if ride comfort is a priority for you, get the standard Creta, not the N Line. The steering is also noticeably heavier than a standard Creta's, and you feel that when you're parking. My biggest pain point, an area where the Creta left me wanting, was fuel economy. Now, my commute is just about 5 kilometers one way, and to be fair, it's through very heavy traffic and it doesn't let the engine run at its optimal. Still, all I got was 7 to 9 kpl. What seemingly made matters worse was the switch from E10 to E20 fuel. In fact, the Creta showed one of the largest drops when we did a comparison study of moving from E10 to E20, with fuel economy dropping by 12.5%. A caveat here, we collectively put 17,000 kilometers on the Creta N Line's odometer, but the bulk of my driving was in the city. I did see a best economy of 14 kpl on a chilled out highway cruise. It was on open roads that I got to use more of the Creta's features. The Creta N Line packs in radar and camera based ADAS features, and they all do work really well. But I'll be honest, for the bulk of my driving, I kept most of the features off. In fact, I only used adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist on the Atal Setu, which is a 21-kilometer sea bridge that gets you out of Mumbai and leads you back into Mumbai. It's 21 kilometers of smooth roads and free flowing traffic, and that is where those features really come handy. An ADAS feature which I didn't expect to use as much as I did was rear cross traffic alert. It alerts you if there is a vehicle moving in your path when you're reversing out, and the fact that it intervened with braking a couple of times means it did its job. Of the other things, the headlights are good but not exceptional. The auto headlight feature did adjust well to changes in ambient lighting. Now onto the matter of costs. A regular service at 10,000 kilometers cost under 3,000 rupees, which is reasonable, but I did have some unexpected expenses. Objects in the mirror are pricier than they appear. The wing mirror took a slow speed hit on one occasion, the glass broke, but the mirror adjust, camera and blind view indicator survived. And thank God for that, because replacing the whole wing mirror would have cost a crazy 32,000 rupees. All the ADAS features and electronics have made the humble wing mirror expensive. I got by just needing to change the glass, which cost 1,000 rupees. The glass wasn't in ready stock and took 3 days to come, but it was a quick fix. I needed to make an out-of-turn pit stop at a Hyundai service center on another occasion. Our Creta N Line ran flawlessly, but we did have a rat problem. In fact, Mumbai's rats seem to have developed a taste for Korean wiring, because a couple of months ago, a Hyundai Verna test car had to be flat-bedded because rats had a go at its wiring. Now, one day I was driving home in the Creta N Line, and the instrument cluster lit up with all manners of warnings. I took it to the service center and they found the problem. Rats had chewed up a bit of the wiring. The repairs cost me about 1,700 rupees, which is okay, because had the rats really made a meal of it, the damages could have been a whole lot more expensive. Service was prompt and the car was delivered back to me in a couple of hours. Over its time with me, the N-Line shared parking space with some of my all-time favorite cars like the G63 and the Velfire, and was an integral part of weekend getaways and celebrations. I usually don't get too attached to test cars, but things with the N-Line were different. So that's a snapshot of life with the Hyundai Creta, and I have to say that my ownership experience has been really, really good. Would I recommend it to a new mid-size SUV buyer? Absolutely yes. The thing is that if you're like me and the bulk of your driving is in town, the N Line or even the standard DCT is not the version to go for. Go for the IVT and all your needs will be fulfilled really, really well. Then comes the bigger question: should you be looking at a Creta at all in the face of newer competition like the Tata Sierra and the Kia Seltos? Well, I have to be honest that the Creta is on the back foot in some areas, but then there are buyers to whom a Creta is a Creta. And for that lot, you just cannot go wrong with this model. The next generation Creta is less than a year away, and I can't wait to see what they do with that one. For the moment, I'm really, really sad to see this member of my family go back.